Greetings, everyone. I'm glad to be back. Sorry for the long furlough and making these videos. But during the time that I was off, I was also dealt with a illness that hit me for a little over 7 months, and I was not able to produce any videos. But today I'm back, and glad you're back at watching my videos and supporting my YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about a issue that is growing, and to show proof also that those who are anti-Noahide or anti-Noahide laws or of such are just basically going by what they've been told. They've not done their own studies. At one time, I was anti-Noahide law as well, until I sat down and studied the Hebrew scriptures and done my research. And talking with some others and some threads on Facebook, I've kind of come to the conclusion that I needed to make a video on this subject, even though I have covered in other videos the Noahide laws. But today I want to look at the source of the Noahide laws and why they're called the Noahide laws by many. Today I'm going to be reading from, it's a new book that I bought. This is called The Living Torah by Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan of blessed memory. It's a newer English translation of the Torah using traditional Jewish sources in a more modern language. And so today it'll be my primary work that I will be looking at the Torah in Genesis 9. There are other books like the Article Humash, the Interlineal Humash right here. You can read the Hebrew and the English together. The Article Humash has English and Hebrew as well. But today, for just an English translation without any Hebrew next to it, I'm going to use this Living Torah by Rabbi Kaplan. So, to begin with, I would like to go over to Genesis chapter 9. Genesis chapter 9. And I'm just going to read the first 17 verses. And then I'm going to come back and we're going to discuss why these are called the Noahide laws. In Genesis 9, verse 1, it says, God blessed Noah and his children. He said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. There shall be fear and dread of you instilled in the wild beasts of the earth, and all the birds of the sky, and all that will walk the land, and all flesh of the sea. I have placed them in your hands. Every moving thing that lives shall be to you as food. Like plant vegetables, I have now given you everything. But nevertheless, you may not eat flesh of a creature that is still alive. Only of the blood of your own lives will I demand an account. I will demand such an account from the hand of every wild beast, from the hand of a man, even from the hand of a man's own brother. I will demand an account of every human life. He who spills human blood shall have his own blood spilled by man. For God made man with his own image. Now, be fruitful and multiply, swarm all over the earth and become populous on it. God said to Noah and his sons with him, I myself am making a covenant with you and with your offsprings after you. It will also include every living creature that is with you among the birds, the livestock, and all the beasts of the earth with you, all who left the ark, including every animal on the earth. I will make my covenant with you, and all life will never be cut short by the waters of a flood. There will never again be a flood to destroy the earth. God said, "This is the sign that I am providing for the covenant between me and you and every living creature that is with you for everlasting generations. I have placed my rainbow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring the clouds over the earth, the rainbow will be seen among the clouds. I will then recall the covenant that exists between me and you and every living soul in all flesh. The rainbow will be in the clouds, and I will see it to recall the eternal covenant between God and every living soul in all flesh that is on the earth." God said to Noah, "This is a sign of the covenant that I have made between me and all flesh that is on the earth." Now, at first cursory reading, I myself, like many others, when we read this story, we read about the rainbow and we think it's about the rainbow. It's about the covenant of the earth, that God gave us a rainbow, meaning He will not flood the earth with water. That is true, but that's not the whole story. Everything prior to that is part of the covenant. And it took some time of sitting down and reading this section over and over again to see that this is the whole covenant. The laws that God gives Noah is part of the covenant. And once you study it and you begin to see, you will understand. And today I hope to show you this in this video. Now, to start out, the word Noahide, or Noahide, as it's pronounced in Hebrew, is not in the Hebrew Scriptures. That word is not there. Matter of fact, there's a lot of words that we use today that is not in the Hebrew Scriptures. Some denounce what is called the Rainbow Covenant by many. They denounce it because the word's not in the Hebrew Scripture. Where the word car, automobile, is not in there either. Swimming pool is not in the Hebrew Scripture. So do we denounce a swimming pool? Do we denounce cars? But even let's take it to a religious side, because most people are coming at it from a religious viewpoint in their minds. Noahide, again, is not in the Hebrew Scriptures. Noahide, or the Noahide Laws, means that these laws are given this name because of Noah. God spoke to Noah and his sons. Now, 6 of these laws actually trace back to Adam. God gave Noah a 7th law after the flood. But because God started the earth over, we don't call these laws the Adamic laws. We call them Noahide laws because it's named after Noah, who all flesh today is from, that one particular family. Now, Noahide laws represents a belief system. And so that's part of what Noahide law is. Some people choose not to use that term, which is fine. I use it occasionally when I'm speaking to people because they will understand what I'm talking about because of that term. It is a description of a belief system. They are Noahide laws. They're laws that were given to Noah and to be passed down to all mankind, which we have neglected for hundreds of years. We've had essence of them, but we've not had the complete package that was given to us in Genesis chapter 9. Now, on a religious viewpoint, we can say the word Baptist, Pentecostal, Christian, Judaism, Islam, Methodist, UPC or United Pentecostal Church, or Hinduism or Buddhism or let's say Krishna. None of those words are in the Bible. So do we denounce them because they're not in the Bible? No. They are terms, man-made terms to describe a belief system. And so when you have people who are anti-Noahide, they'll jump, well, it's not in the Bible. Well, there's a lot of things not in the Bible. Poor excuse. Pretty much most of the time, just like myself, I was repeating what I have heard and what I've been taught without doing my own research. It's kind of like those, I'll be honest with you, those that are anti-Noahide laws are like those on Facebook who will share a news item without researching to see if it's a true news or a fake news. Because we know that fake news is a big thing today. Well, there's a lot of fake news in the religious world as well. And I can show you, and I'm going to show you, that this Rainbow Covenant, as it's been called by many, or Noahide Covenant by others, is a true covenant of the Hebrew Scriptures, which God spoke to Israel at Mount Sinai in front of millions of people. Not one person, one man didn't come up with this idea. It was already here. God spoke it to Moses. Understand, and Moses wrote these things down. Moses did not create these laws. Noah did not create these laws. The Creator, Elohim, God Himself, spoke these things. And they've been neglected by pretty much majority of us, of humanity. We were kidnapped by false religions that are in this world. The Noahide laws are not a religion, but they're a way of life, how God intended for us to be with one another and to be with Him. There's no churches, there's no ceremonies, there's no Sabbaths, there's no rituals and rites in these laws. So therefore, it's not a religion based on those facts. It's only a religion in a way that they are a list of things that someone will do or believe. But the laws themselves are not a religion. They are mandates by God the Creator, who gave them to His creation. We are His creation. If we believe, or if you believe in the Creator, then these were given to us, and it's just been neglected. Man has come up with his own ideas on how they think God should be worshipped, or whatever God it is that they worship. So, in the first 6 verses, all of Genesis chapter 9, all of the 7 laws of Noah are given. Now let's look at them individually. God blessed Noah and his children, and He said to them, from this verse, we know that God is the Creator. He is the one who is speaking. So, from that verse alone, we get what's called the prohibition of idolatry. We do not worship other gods. Also, because He is the Creator, we respect Him and we don't curse Him. Therefore, we get the prohibition of not to blaspheme, not to curse God, not to get angry enough that we want to curse Him in any way. So we get God blessed Noah and his children. We get those 2 commandments from that verse. When we look into that verse and we begin to ask, who is speaking? What is he saying? we find out that it is God himself. So we don't commit idolatry, and we don't commit blasphemy against God. He says, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. This is the prohibition against forbidden sexual relations. Man was created to populate the earth. So it takes a male and a female to do this. It says, be fruitful and multiply on the earth, as it was told to us earlier on in Genesis during the time of Adam. A man shall leave his mother and father and cleave unto his wife, and his wife shall be one flesh. The teaching of that verse is the way they become one flesh is through their children. But you cleave unto your wife and not someone else's wife. And so we can see here the law of adultery, that is in the Ten Commandments, which was given to Israel. But we also see that God spoke it to us, that we are to be fruitful and fill the earth. Now, on down in verse 2 of chapter 9, we says, I have placed them in your hands. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. Like the plants of the vegetables, I give you everything. Now, from these laws, we get the prohibition of theft. We don't take from one another, because God has given every individual what they need. There's no need to take something that is not yours. Just because it says, I have given you everything, that doesn't mean that you take your neighbor's, that it belongs to you. No. We are given everything, because it says everything shall be food. We eat whatever it is. For the Noahides, the Gentile nations, there are no kosher and non-kosher, clean or unclean, pure, impure, whatever. Yes, he gave those laws to Israel, but for the mankind in general, we are only given one dietary law, and that is, but nevertheless you may not eat flesh of a creature that is still alive. We are not allowed to eat meat from an animal if the animal is still living. It is cruel to that animal. And because it is cruel to that animal, as stated in my other videos, the 7 laws are only categorical. And every one of them have many sub-rulings under them. And this is one of, for example, not eating meat taken from a living animal teaches us how to properly treat an animal, how to properly treat creation. We get a lot of our rulings and laws of taking care of the creation, having it in mind and thought before you do something to it. Like an ancient rabbi was talking to his students, you don't pluck a leaf off of a tree for no reason. Have a purpose for it. And that can stem back to this particular command to not eat meat taken from a living animal. And then it says, I will demand on account of every human life. A man who spills human blood, a man shall spill his blood. For we are created in the image of God. And so we have the prohibition of murder. Again in verse 7 it says, now be fruitful, multiply, swarm all over the earth, and become populous on it. That command again is the command that fits in with the forbidden sexual relations, because many sexual relations prohibit a person from procreating. Now, I want to get into the rainbow. God said to Noah and his sons with him, I myself am making a covenant with you and your offspring after you. Now, As I said before, we're all descendants of Noah and his 3 sons. So that covenant that God was making is with you. Not just with Noah. He says, I'm making it with your offspring. Noah's offspring has not stopped producing. So he's speaking to us. Matter of fact, he even takes it further. And he says, this is the sign of the covenant I am providing between me and you and every living creature that is with you for everlasting generations. He goes on and says, this sign of the covenant that I make with you between me and all flesh on the earth. He says, I make it with all souls on the earth. So, he's just not making a pretty sign in the sky that says, I'm not going to flood the earth. So how does this? How does Genesis 9:1 through 7 tie into the rainbow covenant? God is saying he's not going to destroy the earth and all flesh with water. Now, we have to go back for a few years here. God just destroyed the earth with water. Why? Why did God destroy the man and the earth with water? It says that the sins of man had become grave. And when you read on in like Genesis chapter 6, and you study it, the sins that brought on the flood was robbery, injustice, violence. The sins of man against man is what brought on the flood. And why God said it even grieved that he'd even made man. So now he's telling Noah, I'm not going to get that mad again. I'm not going to destroy all earth for the way you act from man to man. Yes, people will die in regional floods here and there when he gets upset with a region. But he's not going to destroy all of man and all of living flesh like he did the first time ever again. So what he's telling us here in Genesis 9, all of these commands that we learn from Genesis 9:1 through 9:6 is the reason why there was a flood to begin with. The generation before the flood extremely neglected these laws, and it brought on a flood. So this time, the Creator was telling us that he's not going to destroy the earth anymore with water. Now, it doesn't mean he might destroy it with something else. We have examples of that. The example of Sodom, the cities of the plain of Sodom was destroyed with brimstone, with fire from the sky. And Ezekiel, I believe it is chapter 16, somewhere in there, tells us the reason why Sodom was destroyed was because of their actions. They were full of bread, full of money, and how they treated the stranger and the poor, and the way they treated one another. And that brought on their destruction. Matter of fact, and this is a book I recommend. It's by the Art Scroll Tanakh series. It's practically a verse-by-verse study of the book of Jonah. Now, we know that God got mad at Jonah, and a lot of people, Jonah and the whale. But because of the pretty children's story of Jonah and the whale, they neglect the heart of the matter. And the ancient sages of Israel had this to say. It says, furthermore, the fact that the Ninevites did not destroy any places of idolatry as part of their repentance proves that they were innocent of that cardinal sin, and that their wickedness was limited to moral and social sins, God therefore took compassion upon them and gave them the opportunity to repent. Riot, who's one of the ancient sages, explains that the sin of the Ninevites lay especially in the area of robbery and oppression. See verses 3 and 8. Thus, it is parallel to the evil generation of the flood, Genesis 6. And the Sodomites, which were destroyed because of their similar descent of violence. As a general rule, God intervenes directly in the affairs of a nation only when they resort to this form of behavior because it is destructive of social order. Therefore, contrary to his wish that man live and thrive in a society, and therefore, in order to preserve his creation, God intervenes. Something he would not do had the sinless involved only idolatry or immorality. So what we find here in Genesis chapter 9 are the 7 laws. What we call the Noahide Laws produces a harmonized society. Why would someone be anti-Noahide law and say it's not part of the Bible? These laws are good laws. Prohibition of theft, prohibition of murder, prohibition of eating meat from a live animal. One of the other laws is setting up judgments, a judgment system, a justice system to rule with these laws. Proper sexual conduct so that man would procreate and spread across the earth. Why would someone be against these laws? I don't know. And like I said, I was once anti-Noahide as well because I didn't know what I was anti. And most people who were screaming and hollering anti this and anti that have not studied to find out what they're protesting. And so, again, these laws are tied to the rainbow because God said that he basically, by this rainbow covenant that he made with all mankind, is he wouldn't get mad enough at our sins to destroy us as a human race. That's what it's all about. But the laws in front of it explains why he won't destroy, why the symbol of the covenant is so important. Every time we see a rainbow, technically, when we see a rainbow and we say, oh, it's pretty, and we take pictures and all this stuff, but we need to remember that that rainbow is a symbol to the Creator that we have sinned and deserve death, but He chooses not to. He chooses not to wipe us out anymore. That's what it is. We have broken the 7 laws in such a way that God has to put a rainbow in the sky to remind him, no, don't destroy them. That's what the rainbow is all about. The rainbow is a sign saying that we've broke the 7 laws. It's a picture of the 7 laws. And the group that uses a rainbow flag is very ironic because it's in violation of one of the things that can cause our destruction. And I didn't mean to just say that, but I'm just being honest to come out. There's a group that uses the rainbow colors as a symbol for their freedom, when in all actuality, the rainbow is a symbol of our sin. That we stand in judgment, but God is not going to use a capital form of judgment on us as a human race. Now, some people may die in a flood, like I said before, but that is because the sins of that region has to be cleaned up. I'm not saying everyone who's died is a sinner and deserves it, like we had the floods of Hurricane Katrina and all. That judgment is solely based upon God and what He saw and what He does. We can't make our own judgments on the judgment of God. All we can do is look at afterwards and see that maybe a certain events happen so people will change and come back to Him and return to the Creator and return to these 7 laws that we get in the book of Genesis 9. And God says that this is for every human being, every generation, every soul living. He's not just going to destroy the earth. That's not the covenant. The rainbow doesn't mean, oh, God's not going to flood us anymore. We have to look at it deeper. Why did God flood the earth to begin with? And it was in violation of the 6 laws that was given to Adam that was passed down to Noah. Matter of fact, in Genesis chapter 7, it tells us that Noah did everything that God commanded him. And that's what caused him to be chosen not to die in the flood. Matter of fact, his family was not even a righteous family. It tells us in early on in Genesis there, before, as the flood was coming, God told Noah to go into the ark and take with him his family, for they are saved because of his righteousness. And that alone is an interesting topic to study out and to think about, the brevity of that situation. But today we're looking at the Rainbow Covenant. We're looking at the Noahide Laws, the laws given to Noah after the flood, and given to his children, given to his offspring. And so many of us that go by the term Noahide, if you choose that term, we're about returning back to these basic categorical laws, wanting our society to be set up on these laws so that we can have a harmonious society. We find out that in Nineveh, when it says that God saw their deeds, the ancient sages of Israel teach us that they stopped robbing one another. They stopped injustice, mistreating one another. When items in a person's home was there that they found, oh, I stole this from so-and-so, they would return that item back to who they stole it to and ask for forgiveness. And God saw their deeds and forgave them. And my personal opinion, this is my 2 cents worth, the reason why we don't see massive destructions on the earth, there are just spots here and there where hundreds and maybe a few thousand are killed, but we don't see millions of people killed at one time because of the way they live, is that there is kindness on the earth. Kindness in people's hearts. They may not know these laws as a set of laws to live by, but they treat people with kindness, and that kindness outweighs the evil. And my personal opinion is right now there's enough kindness in the earth to keep away the evil decree that is just upon humanity because of its evil actions. So I hope this helps you understand, and I want you to go back, look at Genesis 9 verses 1 through 17, and look at it together as a package deal, that these laws and that rainbow covenant, and establishing what God gave, are not 2 separate things. They're all one thing. They're a package. That the reason why the flood began to begin with was because of the violation of the 6 commandments given to Adam. Now God is telling Noah, here's these commandments. He's not giving it in commandment form. He's just talking to them like you're training and teaching a child to walk, to tie your shoes. When you tell a kid, don't steal something when you go to the store, it's not yours. It's not a list of commandments like we find in Exodus 20 that was given to Israel. And there actually wasn't commandments. There actually means sayings or statements. When we read the Hebrew, it's not really commandments, it's statements. God gave 10 statements. And so here we can see that God gave Noah 7 basic statements that we are to that there is a God, there's a creator, so we don't do idolatry, worship a foreign a foreign God, a man-made God. 2, we don't blaspheme. We respect the one God. We treat with respect His name. We don't curse Him, and we don't. There's many other sub-laws that deals with blasphemy. We don't murder. We don't do theft. We don't rob, and we don't steal. Prohibition of that. Prohibition of forbidden sexual relations. Remember, we were created to procreate, and that when we marry, our wives are our wives, and we cleave to them and no one else's wives. And so there's many sub-rulings to that. We don't eat meat taken from a living animal. We have care for the animal, and we don't bring harm to the animal by eating its meat while it is still alive. We make sure that the animal is dead. It's not convulsing, but it's dead. Its life force is gone. Then we're permitted to eat that meat, regardless of what animal it's from. And then the 7th law, or not necessarily the 7th, but the 7th one in this list, is we set up courts of justice to make sure these laws are taught and obeyed. The biggest thing when the correct courts of justice that will be set up will be most likely classrooms to teach one another these laws, so that you understand them and people begin to keep them. And then again, at the end of what God was speaking to Noah and his children, He says He sets a sign in the heavens. He will not flood the earth. And that sign and the flooding is all tied to the laws. The 7 statements, if you want to put it that way, 7 dialogues that God gave to Noah. They're not a set of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 laws like some people want. It's a dialogue. And from that dialogue, we interpolate from that dialogue what's expected of us, what we're not supposed to do. And so I hope that this video helps someone out there understand who may have an anti-Noahide or anti-Noahide law mentality, that this is a set of laws for all of us. And we're not commanded to evangelize these laws, but to live them. But when you get to share, tidbits of things, of why you don't do such and such, you don't do it from a religious standpoint. Oh, you don't kill a person because, you don't have to say, well, I don't kill you because God said don't kill you. Well, that law needs to be personalized. You don't want to kill someone because you don't want to kill them. You were created in the Creator's image, so therefore that image is in you, and so you don't murder. I mean, first you don't murder because the law says not to, but then you don't murder because it's not part of who you are, or you don't steal because it's not who you are. You're not married and sleeping around. It's not who you are. So these laws are there to become a part of who you are, not just a list of do's and don'ts. That can become rote. That can become just raw. A set of laws of do's and don'ts and 1, 2, 3s and 4, 5, 6s, whatever. That can become boring per se for a lot of people. But when it becomes who you are, that you don't do these things, or you do these things not only because the Creator should be told us to do these, should be first, but then you should internalize it, and it becomes who you are as a person. And that's what the 7 laws are all about, bringing harmony to the earth between man and his Creator. And again, I hope today that I've helped you, I've helped someone. If this video has been beneficial to you, please share this video. Please share my YouTube channel. Also, my written blog at emunatrek.com is there as well. Feel free to make comments or ask questions about the Rainbow Covenant or the Noahide Laws. Ask for the reason of wanting to learn, not for debate. I don't debate. But if someone sends me a question and they're asking me something about these, and they're generally studying and wanting to know, I have no problem answering your question. Thank you for tuning in, and be looking forward to our next video.